So the first question I'm going to toss to John as the federal representative here, and I'd like actually the other two of you to take a crack at this too. What grade would you give the K-12 public schools in the United States in STEM education right now? And why?
So I think that the challenge is there are really two grades. There are places where we should get an A, and there are places where we should get more like a D, frankly. The places where we should get an A, we have lots of schools around the country that are doing a fantastic job preparing students who go on to higher education and excel in STEM fields. We are producing folks who are creating incredible inventions. We are driving huge innovation in the technology field, and there are school districts that have numerous Intel winners and can point you to incredible laboratories where students are doing interesting higher education level research while in high school or even middle school. And then on the other hand, we have schools that don't have that. A quarter of the schools that have the largest number of African American Latino students don't even offer Algebra 2. About a third of them don't even offer chemistry. And so in those schools where you can't even take the courses that would put you on a path to STEM, we're not doing nearly well enough, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think the challenge for the department is to figure out how do we go from excellence for some to excellence for all.
Okay, an A and a D. Chancellor Henderson, what do you think?
So I don't have the national perspective that John has. I am focused on DC public schools and keep my head down quite a bit. But I'd offer a different perspective. I would say, we've had a focus on a certain set of things for a long time, right? And we have not, I actually think we've only recently begun to say that STEM is important, and we need to make sure that all young people get early exposure and opportunities to be in STEM. And so I would say we just started taking the class, and we haven't completed the class yet, so there's no grade.
Incomplete.
I'd say it's in progress, right? And I think, having school districts focus on or having a conversation about what is important in terms of a foundational education that will prepare you not only for STEM, right? Because I know few 12, 13, 15-year-olds who know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, but how we provide an education that is well-rounded enough, that gives them exposure, enough exposure that they can really latch on to something if that is their passion, but also exposure to other things so that they're prepared for whatever it is they want to do.
Okay. Incomplete, A and D.
F.
Okay. Dr. Lomax, you've got a strong opinion.
Yeah, I do. Clearly, if you're a high-income kid in this country, you're in a B or above school. If you are a low-income kid of color in this country, you are in a failing school when it comes to STEM, because the facts are the facts. I mean, on every standardized examination, ACT and UNCF just issued a report, and for the second year in a row, only 5% of African American high school graduates graduate college ready. 5%, not 95%, 5%. That means that they are prepared to take and receive a B, C or B, in a college course without a remediation. 5%. I think it's 10% for Latino kids, and it's a higher number for white kids. But I think that if you did a cross-cut on that, on income, then the well-off kids are going to do well, and the low-income kids are going to do badly. And what we know, Nick, is that the low-income kids can learn. They can learn STEM. They can learn algebra. They can learn trigonometry. They can learn calculus, but not if nobody teaches them.
Okay, that's a good point. That's going to segue me to Dr. King for another question, and after this question, I'm going to come to you, so be ready. Okay, Dr. King, it's well established that in a lot of places around the country, there's shortages of qualified STEM teachers. That's one issue here. And I'd like you to just give me a quick view of the kinds of things that the federal government is doing to sort of solve that issue and other issues related to STEM education.
So there are sort of things we're doing within current resources. So for example, there's a first in the world grant program for higher ed institutions that are innovating around preparing STEM graduates, many of whom we hope will go into teaching at either the K-12 or post-secondary level. But we need to do more to address exactly the problems that Michael is describing. Where we have the most significant gaps are in our highest needs schools. And so the president has proposed investing $100 million in a teacher and leader pathways initiative that would allow us to give money to states to focus on preparing STEM teachers. We also need more teachers who are prepared to work with students who are English language learners. We need more teachers who are prepared to help students with disabilities make progress. We hope we can convince Congress to make that investment. A lot will be told in the next few months as we see how we get through this budget process.
Okay. I'd like to ask anybody in the audience who'd like to ask a question, if you could come with me right now and raise your hand. And got one? If you could say who you are, please, and then a quick question. Make it a question.
Sure. Peter Guttmacher, DC Trust for Youth, and at our scintillating table, the topic came up of cross-curricular work, so the blending of STEM with other subjects. I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I'd love to jump in. So at DC Public Schools, we actually believe that you have to make this work cross-curricular. There are ways to learn science that incorporate social studies and math, technology, and what have you. And I'm really excited that this year we are requiring across every single school, every grade level, integrated, inquiry-based, interdisciplinary projects that have been designed by our most highly effective teachers that all of our students will participate in, that in fact combine those various subject areas. And so we call it the Cornerstones Initiative, and you see things like, 8th graders creating desalination machines, right? Where they're not only learning about science, but they're also learning about social studies. Where would you need desalination machines and why? And put together a presentation for a company or a government that might need to buy your product. That kind of real world problem solving is the way that we believe you best prepare young people, not just for STEM, but for any career in the new economy.
So I want to follow up on this a little bit, because I think STEM is such a phrase, I think, that attracts parents and policymakers, and, oh, my kid's got to get into STEM. Are you not finding that STEM is a big attraction in your schools, or is it? Or
So I think the STEM hype is reflective of the fact that when you look at where jobs are, right? There are jobs in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields. And all of us send our kids to school. Why? Not to go to college, but to get jobs, right? And so if the jobs are in STEM, we want to make sure that we're aligned and preparing. But those are not the only jobs. And so I think what you hear is a real cry for alignment in a preparation of K-12 education and in college education to ensure that our young people are able to compete for the best jobs in the world.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in there. Look, so we've done a lot at UNCF over the last 25 years to demonstrate that STEM is something that kids of color will pursue. In partnership with Merck 25 years ago, they spent $50 million. We've produced 700 research scientists. And so they're there. We, with Bill and Melinda Gates' $1.6 billion gift to create the Gates Millennium Scholars Program, will be 20,000 low-income, high-performing kids from all across the country, kids of color going to whatever university or college they want, and over 35% of them will be pursuing STEM. So we know that these kids can do this. What we're not doing is giving them the opportunity to do it. And so I think that what we need is innovative chancellors like Kaya, who are saying, every kid can learn this. We've got to demystify it, number one. We've got to bring the parents into this, with the adults in their lives, to understand that just because you didn't get math at the level that your child is going to require, it doesn't mean that you can't encourage and motivate that. My daughter is a a computer science major. She worked at Google. She's worked at, she was a Kleiner Perkins Fellow last summer this summer out in California. 16th century English literature here. I don't know any of that, but I know that I kept pushing her to do it. And that's what that's what we've got to get more parents to do.
Okay, well, what about the role of private industry? I mean, they're at the end of this pipeline, and I find myself wondering, you know, should they be stepping in here to sort of to make some?
So this cannot be done by us.
That's right.
By ourselves. This has got to be for two reasons. One is, and I think that you want to get these kids excited about the opportunity to pursue STEM. You get them, you get them to have an opportunity to meet the people at Apple who produce the handheld that they use, or at Google. What we're seeing these kids do is they're becoming incredible consumers of technology. What we've got to help them understand is they can become creators of technology.
We have incredible partnerships with the business community here. So we have a program called DC Meets Washington, where we actually expose our middle grade students to the high wage, high growth careers in the region, and two of the biggest are engineering and IT. And so at our career academies and through our partnerships, our young people have paid internships. We had a group of young people who we asked them to design an app that would help translate the DCPS curriculum so that parents could help their students. And we had a team from McKinley Technology High School that won the app challenge, and they had a paid internship at Accenture this summer where they developed the app, and the app is now available on the Android platform. So business has been working hand in hand with us in the preparation of our young people.
So let's talk money for a second. I mean, a lot of this innovation takes money. And you're saying business is stepping in to help. Dr. King, do you think that there is enough money in the public system to make these things happen? And I'm particularly interested because your federal initiatives is probably the money for new initiatives is probably fairly scarce at this point, given your relations with Congress. What's the money situation?
Well, one of our challenges is that we spend vastly different amounts in different communities, right? And so some communities clearly have more resources to invest in these activities than others. But I think there are examples in every community of schools that are doing this in smart ways within existing resources, and businesses that are contributing not just financially, but manpower to the effort. One great example is a turnaround school in New York City, the PTech school. It's a school that's a partnership between IBM, New York City, and the City University of New York. That school is a new school that was created in a building that was a failing high school. That failing high school was replaced with new schools, one of which was the PTech school. Using existing federal dollars, existing district and state dollars, they created a school where students will graduate with a high school diploma, an associate's degree, and first in line for a job at IBM. And IBM's biggest contribution was mentors, matching kids with IBM mentors who help give kids a sense of what's possible for them. And when you talk to kids in the school, they will tell you about their mentor from IBM, and they will describe a vision for their lives that reflects that relationship, where they'll say, I want a life like my IBM mentor. That's a powerful example of partnership, and that partnership's being replicated across New York and Connecticut and Illinois, and we hope in other places around the country.
But we need more, and we need vastly more, because if we're going to be competitive in the 21st century,
Not just isolated examples.
Yeah, I mean, and there are great examples, but what we don't have is a sense of how we're going to scale this, because we've got all these proof points. We've got proof points, you've got proof points, you've got proof points. But what we don't have is a coordinated effort. Now, we're in Washington, D.C., we're not going to have a national policy which is going to drive this. Right. And what I think we're really missing here, is there is a huge opportunity for the private sector to come in here and first of all say, we are leading in technology as a nation. If we want to continue to lead, we've got to make sure that our kids are getting first world educations, and we need all of our kids to get that. The second thing we got to say is we need to give them opportunities to understand what it means to use what they're learning to do something else, and so that this is going to be a lot of experiential learning. This is going to be a lot of peer-driven learning. you know, I was talking about hackathons. I mean, hackathons, you know, peer-driven learning where the standard for excellence is being set by other young people. They're locking themselves in a room for 48 hours, and they're coming out with a solve on something, and they're beginning to see that what they are learning in the classroom, they can apply, because so much of this is going to be about application. And the other reason why we need business to be involved in it, because the pace of change is going to be so accelerated that what you learn today is not going to apply exactly tomorrow. And what we learn in the classroom, we can give them the tools and the foundations, but to get the real world experience is what's going to drive their performance.
But this is a shift, right? Because previously, education, especially K-12 education, was really about teaching people a set of facts, right? And some basic skills that they could use to negotiate citizenry in the United States. And then they went to college and they learned how to think, right? Now we actually have to teach kids how to think. We need to teach them how to extrapolate across different subject areas. We need to teach them how to apply knowledge in different contexts. And that's asking teachers to do something different than they've done for a long time. You always had some teachers who were teaching this way, but we have to ensure that every teacher in every classroom, no matter what subject area, is training our kids to think, to apply, and to operate in the real world.
So if you're teaching language arts, you need to be thinking science at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if you're thinking science, you need to be thinking language arts at the same time.
Let's go to the audience again. Anybody else have a question? We can, okay, over here.
Hi, my name is Patty Curtis with the Museum of Science in Boston. I want to congratulate the Chancellor on the Cornerstones project. Particularly, Vanessa mentioned elementary engineering, and I wondered, how are you convincing your teachers that they can do this? How will you equip them, train them? And then also, my second question is, how do you convince your peers, other superintendents in other states, that this is an important thing to do?
Yeah, so I feel very lucky that I have teachers who, we've been through a lot of changes in DC public schools, and I have a group of teachers who, in fact, are wide open. They are really committed to doing whatever is best for kids. And as long as we don't dump on them, here's another thing, right? And we're able to cogently wrap this into how this translates into real success for our kids. Our teachers they seek out new opportunities. They come to professional development. I'm really proud of our teaching corps. I feel like they are the drivers of a lot of this work. We lay out the vision for where we want our young people to go, and our teachers are actually the ones driving the train. As to my peers and my colleagues, you'd be surprised. Lots of my colleagues actually want to pursue many of the things that we are doing. I think, being an urban superintendent is tough, and we are dealing with 750 different things. We have to figure out how to help people understand what's really important and how to cut away all of the other garbage.
Can I ask you, Chancellor Henderson, related to a story we just are publishing today about Banneker High School? I noticed this is a high school that has a huge share of female students. And I made me wonder, is there a gender issue that you see with STEM? Either in the case of Banneker, obviously the disproportionate female, but a lot of people think, oh, well, there's a gender issue the other way. There's disproportionately male in STEM education. What are you seeing?
There is a gender issue in STEM. I think we all know it, and it is, in STEM, careers are heavily weighted or representative
careers
by the males, right? Banneker is a selective admissions high school. It's college prep, and so it mirrors lots of the statistics that you see across education, which is that girls are usually outperforming boys. Interestingly enough, the real example is McKinley Technology High School, which you would expect to be heavily weighted towards boys, but in fact they have a majority of girls. And so I think part of the way you eliminate that gender gap is by exposing kids at the youngest ages. So we have kindergartners who are coding. We have Project Lead the Way in our middle schools where all of our young people are experimenting with engineering. And I think, you've seen the Goldie blocks, right? Where girls have the ability to build in pink and purple if that's what turns them on. I think we've got to make sure that we're exposing all of our young people as early as possible.
And Dr. King, do you have any thoughts on the gender issue?
Yeah, I think part of what Kaya raises around the underrepresentation of boys in competitive admission, selective admission programs in K-12 reflects that we can't deal with the STEM problem in isolation. African American Latino boys are disproportionately suspended from school. African American Latino boys are disproportionately involved in the criminal justice system, and we've got some systemic issues as a country.
But how does that bear on STEM education?
Well, if you're not in school, you're not going to be pursuing STEM, right? If you've been, right? And so, so I think part of our challenge is we have a tendency sometimes when we talk about education policy to want to focus only on a narrow issue, but they're all interconnected. Early learning is connected. If kids aren't getting exposed to math and science from the earliest grades, when they get to later grades, they're much less interested in those subjects, and they don't have the fundamental skills. So we've got to see this as an interconnected problem.
Dr. Lomax, I got a question for you about colleges.
Yes.
So we've been kind of focused on K-12, but you know the college zone a little bit. So I wonder, are colleges doing their bit here in STEM education? And the reason I ask this is a lot of times you hear about colleges where students start in STEM, but then they just kind of fall out.
Yeah.
The classes are too tough, or the professors are weeding them out. I'm just kind of curious what you think about that.
Well, first of all, I think there is now a greater focus in post-secondary education on retention and completion. When I showed up in college a half century ago and the president said, look to your left, look to your right, two of those people aren't going to be here at graduation time, that was said as a point of pride. You know, this was a social Darwinism, you know, the survival of the fittest. I think now colleges and universities are thinking much more about what does it take to provide the support to ensure success. So that's good news. I don't think that, but what I'd also say is so much, and we're not where we need to be in K through 12, but so much of the innovation is at the K through 12 level. Mm-hmm. So much of the protection of the status quo is at the college and university. We're the best in the world, so we don't have to change.
You think they do?
We're the best in the world at the very elite level. We're not the best at the world at levels below that. I want to make one other point about gender that you made. So I taught at a women's college, Spelman, and I taught at a male college. I went to Morehouse. When I showed up at Morehouse in 1964, you know, you were expected to major in biology so you could become a doctor, or you know, chemistry or physics, or you were expected to major in business. When you went across over to Spelman, what were the two big majors? They were teacher prep and home economics. Yeah, that's the thing. You know what that home economics building is for now at Spelman College? It's computer science. There's been a huge shift for women, and it's been, and particularly women of color. The civil rights movement and the women's movement has told women you can, and women are pursuing it aggressively. We've got to tell that to our boys. And you know, we talk a lot about how black boys and Hispanic boys are not achieving. Well, the white boys aren't either. And if you look at those post-secondary degrees, you're going to see that the only one where men still outnumber women, I think I'm right on this, is engineering. But guess what? Look in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. The women are moving there. So I think we've got to tell our boys, we've got to tell all of our kids that this is meant for you. And what I hear still, when I go to Silicon Valley, when I go and talk to high-performing kids of color or adults of color, they're still telling me that on their college campuses, if they're not in a historically black college or a minority-serving institution, that people are telling them this isn't meant for you. So we've got to do some different messaging, and we've got to then have also the programs in place which will give these kids and young people the tools to do what they have the God-given capacity to do.
Anybody else from the audience here? We've got a gentleman.
Hi, my name is David Yarmchuk. I work at Center for Inspired Teaching, where I lead the SCALE program, which is a partnership with DCPS to improve STEM teacher leadership at K-12. And my question is for Kaya Henderson, and this comes from some of the things we talked about at our table, but also heard from Vanessa earlier on. What do we as the larger STEM community need to do to help support DCPS in training elementary school teachers in particular to have the content knowledge and also the expertise and the leadership to pass it on to their students? Because we lose students in all along the way in terms of pursuing STEM careers and developing STEM content knowledge?
So that's a really important question. And I'm just gonna say something that I really believe that might be controversial. We believe that like if we just had more time to train people, then teachers could do the 790 things that we want them to do, right? And like that's just not true. I think what we've realized is we have to focus more on people who have content expertise. And so it's no longer just enough to have a general degree, but we've got to have people who have skill. I mean, we've changed our math selection model to make sure that our elementary teachers can actually understand the mistakes that kids are making and help to reteach. Because it's not just enough to know how to do the problem. If you don't know how to deconstruct it for kids and help them reapproach the problem, then it's not going to help. And so I think part of it is a training piece, but tell me when I have the 6 more weeks that I can put people through something. But I really do think that we have to reach back to our education preparation programs and make sure that they are giving our teachers content knowledge. I think we have to provide more and more opportunities. And again, many of my teachers actually take these opportunities over the summertime and in their spare time. I think offering content-based training and professional development is really what it is. And our shift at DCPS has been more towards content-based programs like Bliss and Scale.
The point about training, I think, is important because while you want skill and you need skill, you also have to work with the teachers you have, right? And so you can't just sort of sweep them all away and start over again.
So
right?
No, but I'm training them on content knowledge in their whatever their area is. I'm also training them on, all kinds of things. And I want to be very real about it. We don't have an infinite amount of time to train people.
Or
and
money.
So what we've done is we've built in, and everybody knows that the best training is job embedded. We have coaches in our schools. We've tried to put people in cohorts so that they can actually work with other content-based teachers. And I think by designing our professional development, shifting from here's how to teach to really looking at student work and how do I teach this lesson, we have the ability to improve teacher instructional practice, but it's with a focus on content.
So
Well,
getting
you also
granular.
know that we're going to lose a whole generation. I mean, we're at the baby boomers. We're reluctantly leaving the scene. And there is going to be a new generation of teachers. And this is a great opportunity for all of us to really encourage more of the right people to go into this profession. And if we'll stop demonizing the profession and also giving and recognize that the work that these teachers are doing requires extraordinary skill and extraordinary knowledge, and it needs to be lifted up as it is in other countries and rewarded more significantly, we can get the right teachers in the classroom.
I'll add one more thing to that, and that is it takes time. Again, we're asking teachers to do something very different, right? It takes time for me to get a budget in place that will give them the tools that they need. It takes time for me to find the trainers and the professional developers. It takes time, and we all want it all yesterday, right? And I mean, teachers know this, right? Like, if we're going to do it well, we need to take the appropriate time to do it.
We had a question over here if somebody wants to jump in.
Hello, my name is Teddy Ann Galligan. I'm a science educator, mostly in the informal sector currently. I'm very interested in messaging. I had lived for several years in Port-au-Prince, in one of the hillside shanty towns that was decimated after the earthquake. And I would begin by telling
Need your question quickly.
the kids that, anyhow, we would just do doorstep, open air science. And what it was is a beginning, an opening for the appreciation of the natural universe, and that it was worth sweating for. Kids will sweat for Model UN, kids will sweat for their football coach, but we need kids to be able to love the universe, love that natural inquiry, and put the rigor to it, that is mathematical, and that will help them be prepared. What can we do in the district to help kids learn that this is worth sweating for?
Passion. How can you make kids passionate about this?
Well, a couple things. Maybe I'll give Kaya some praise so she doesn't have to say it herself. But one of the things you need to do is create those extracurricular elective course experiences for kids that are going to engage them and get them excited. And principals have to ask, who's in the robotics club? Does the robotics club reflect the diversity of our school, right? Who's getting access to the summer internship opportunities? Who's in the AP class?
Amen.
We sometimes talk about the gap in advanced placement course taking as a problem of urban schools. But you can go in a lot of suburban schools in the United States and find that the advanced placement course demographics look nothing like the demographics of the school, and nobody's talking about that. So part of it is asking, how do we make sure that kids are getting those opportunities? Kaya's given that a lot of thought. The other is really to see museums and the aquarium and universities as continual partners. The Museum of Natural History in New York, we had someone ask a question from the Museum of Science. The Museum of Natural History in New York actually has a program to train earth science teachers. They have a 150-year history of doing professional development for teachers. They are now awarding master's degrees at the Museum of Natural History to earth science teachers who now bring to the classroom incredible skill, but also deep, deep content knowledge.
The other thing that Kaya is doing is that she's bringing the arts back into to the school as well. And
so it's not just about STEM.
It's about STEAM, and but what we want is we want well-rounded creative. But I want to reinforce what the questioner asked. This is going to be hard work, and if our young people are going to achieve at a world-class level, it's not a walk in the park. This is hard, this is demanding, this is rigorous, and that's what we have to tell them is what they can expect, but it will also be rewarded. And I think that the other part of it is that it can also be stimulating and exciting, and that's why I think you have to bring the arts into it as well.